and welcome to IDDTalks here at AD University. My name is Anastasia Lavrina, and now I'm joined by a very distinguished guest, Mr. John Roberts, who is energy security specialist from London, United Kingdom. Welcome.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much for your time. And let me start with a question about the recent Baku Summer Energy School at AD University, which was focused on energy security and innovation. Looking at today's rapidly changing energy landscape, how would you assess Azerbaijan's evolving role in European energy security?
Azerbaijan has the potential to play a very positive role. Note I use the word potential because, first of all, it is already playing a significant role because of its provision of gas through the Southern Gas Corridor. The potential element relates to the fact that it could increase its gas deliveries to Europe, but that requires investment. And to secure that investment, you therefore need to know that you've got a secure market. So the potential issue relates to the European end of the equation, namely whether they can find a way to prove that Europe is a secure market at a time when it has paradoxically an immediate need for more gas, but faces the prospect of, over the next 10 years or so, requiring less gas.
Right. The Southern Gas Corridor has become one of the key alternative routes supplying gas to Europe. How much more can this corridor realistically contribute to Europe's energy diversification, and what will be required to expand its capacity further?
The answer is that simply because it was designed to have double the current capacity, it can contribute considerably. An extra 10 or 12 BCM through the system, which is allowable for technically just by new compressor stations. You don't need to build new pipeline as such. That has a considerable extra edge in terms of providing insurance for Europe. I ought to say, actually, that although that is generally true of expanding pipelines, not needing to lay new pipeline, there is some suggestion that in some sections of the route, you might need to have a new pipeline. The most important thing, though, is simply that Europe needs diverse supplies, and Azerbaijan has the physical resources that have been proven already, notably features like deep level gas underneath the ACG oil field, or further gas discoveries, further gas that has already been discovered but not yet developed in the Shah Deniz field. So there's a resource base, but it's technically difficult, and it's going to require money to develop that. And you're not going to get that kind of investment unless you're pretty sure that the gas that you produce can be exported to a commercial market like Europe.
And of course, I should ask a question about renewables. Azerbaijan has set ambitious goals for the development of renewable energy and aims to become the important green energy supplier to Europe. How do you assess the country's potential in this area, and what role could European partners play in supporting this transition?
The first thing to say is that Azerbaijan has for many years, pursued a twin-track policy, both to expand its gas exports and to develop exports of electricity based on renewables, and to promote its own energy transition. And that twin track remains, I think, a key facet of Azerbaijan's energy development. So on the renewables track, we have seen that there is already a change in the amount of wind power that is produced. It has increased, I think, something like, let me get this right, I won't give you a figure, but it has already in the last year, as a result of the Kiswa project, increased wind power throughout overall electricity generation. That's important. The issue of getting it into export is more complicated because that requires essentially high voltage direct current cables that have to reach an international market. The obvious international market is Europe and or, depending on how you consider it geographically, Turkey. And I think under the circumstances, the problems inherent in developing a cable under the Black Sea are problematic. The project as such makes some sense. We have heard from the Italian consultants that the Georgian project for that cable might be commercially viable, but we have not yet had an analysis from them in commercial terms concerning the Azerbaijani project, which is 3 times as large. On the other hand, there is the prospect that Azerbaijan could develop a cable export system via Armenia and the Trip corridor. If that was the case, it could go to Turkey and through Turkey onto Europe. So there is a prospect for that. Above all, Azerbaijan is developing onshore very considerable resources. In the short run, this means perhaps as much as 2, I know the Azerbaijanis would like it to be 2.5 metric tons equivalent of a BCM equivalent of gas. In other words, that they would be able to free up that amount of gas for export by substituting electricity. I suspect it's probably over the next 2 or 3 years limited to about 1.5 BCM, but the trajectory is right. And I think that the bottom line here is quite simply that the renewables-based electricity transition is taking place, perhaps a little slower than one would hope, but it is quite genuinely there. And the impact will first of all be felt domestically before it is felt internationally.
Mr. Roberts, as Azerbaijan and Armenia move towards lasting peace and economic normalization, how important could Azerbaijan become for Armenia's future energy security? And could Azerbaijani energy supplies and closer regional energy cooperation help Armenia diversify its sources and reduce its traditional energy dependence?
Absolutely, no question about it. Azerbaijan is already supplying oil products, basically gasoline and diesel, into Armenia. The question is, can it start supplying Armenia with oil and gas? And the answer to that is yes, and it doesn't require much in the way of new products and infrastructure, of new construction and infrastructure to achieve that. It's also important to note that as far back as I think 2008, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan at the time said that if there was peace, he would be prepared, Azerbaijan would be prepared to supply oil and gas to Armenia. And at the same meeting, the Deputy Armenian Foreign Minister said if there was peace, they would be prepared to accept it. So the concept of bilateral cooperation involving what would be commercial sales is there, and it would help Armenia, and it would solidify trilateral relations between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and of course, Georgia.
Well, absolutely. Mr. Roberts, you have an extensive experience in energy issues. Therefore, let me ask a question about the Strait of Hormuz that has once again become the focal point of global energy security, with shipping significantly disrupted by renewed US-Iran tensions. How serious is the situation for global energy markets today?
It's incredibly important. It's important because essentially we not only have the stoppage now, but by closing the strait, Iran has demonstrated that it could do so at any time. What used to be considered a taboo, the strait must not be closed. That taboo has been broken, and you can't simply wish it away. If we had peace tomorrow, in the sense of Iran and the United States reaching some kind of an agreement, who is to say that the day after tomorrow or next week or next month or next year, we wouldn't go back to the same situation? It is not difficult to block the strait. It is incredibly difficult to keep it open by force. It can only really be kept open by diplomacy and agreement. So that's the problem we face. That means essentially, first of all, an immediate problem of sheer lack of oil, and more importantly, the lack of LNG coming from Qatar and to a lesser extent from the UAE, but also the whole question of what happens not just to Western Europe and the rich countries that can get their oil or their gas indeed from elsewhere, but the fertilizer components that go through the strait that keep much of Africa going. That's a very serious issue in terms of what it does to ordinary people's livelihoods, and therefore indirectly puts pressures on Europe because of the possibility of increased demand for immigration from people fleeing countries where there is food poverty.
Mr. Robertson, one more question about the domestic policy of the United Kingdom. Andy Burkham is taking office as the new UK Prime Minister. What are the main expectations from his leadership, and what changes could we see in a British domestic and foreign policy under his government?
The last thing that I think Keir Starmer has done, his last visit, was to Ukraine to demonstrate continued British solidarity with Ukraine. And I have no doubt at all that Andy Burnham, as Prime Minister, will maintain that support. There is some talk underway that Britain might try to move to reverse its cuts to international aid. So that is useful and practical in terms of building up Britain's, as it were, soft diplomacy abroad. In terms of hard issues, it's very difficult to think that there will be much difference in foreign policy. A lot will depend on who becomes Foreign Secretary. In this context, it's quite interesting that the name of Ed Miliband, the current Energy Secretary, has been mentioned for foreign policy, because if that is the case, then you could expect an even greater emphasis on promoting the energy transition in order to combat climate change. That would be excellent. I'm not sure whether there is any major issue. The obvious one is, what kind of psychological relationship will Mr. Burnham be able to have with President Trump? That's always the tricky one. And the only thing we can say is that Andy Burnham has an amazing way of becoming sympathetic to his audience. He does connect. So it's just possible that just as when another mayor, Zoran Mamdani in New York, went to the White House, and here he is, the absolute antithesis of Mr. Trump, and yet he established a relationship with the president. It's just possible Andy Burnham could do the same.
Well, Mr. Roberts, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining IDDTalks. Indeed, a pleasure to host you in our program.
A pleasure.